We're still waiting for one person, but I thought maybe we could start so that we don't waste time. So I am going to start and end with the senior most. Athar, would you like to start?
Okay. The poems I'll be reading are strict sonnets, observing the three requirements. Number 1, 14 lines. Number 2, each line of 10 syllables. And number 3, a definite rhyme scheme. As we know, the form started in Florence in the 12th century, and one of the leading practitioners was Petrarch. And in English literature, Spenser, Shakespeare, Milton, and in the 20th century, W.H. Auden used this form. I've been writing in this form several years before I went up to Oxford. It is a challenging, but ultimately a satisfying form if the three requirements are not violated. Otherwise, Robert Lowell, the American poet, called his 14-line poem sonnets without observing the other two requirements of 10 syllables each and a proper rhyme scheme. The first sonnet, Sonnet 71, is about aging. Each year subtracts a little of the spring in the step, the eyes' clarity, and hands' steady grip. Despite my smiled posturing, I now make fewer and fewer demands. Even some intangibles in this state, like a long-held fragrance, I can now shun, and all the sunshine I would fabricate to live in familiar abstraction. I am you in the mirror, looking back at me, not as I am, as I could be. For the moment, this sharing is enough. Some such moments I pack, unpack, repack, or fold to shapes beyond origami. For the moment, this absence is enough.
Can everybody hear well?
Can I request those fans? I don't know if the
Yeah.
fans are anything good, apart from noise.
Shall I continue or you want me to wait? You want me to wait or continue? The second sonnet is about my mother. 2 points. Many years after she passed away, we opened a cabin trunk which transported her belongings from Malaysia to Lahore. And secondly, 2 English typefaces are mentioned. Times Roman, with its serifs or sharp triangular ends, and Calibri, which has no serifs. Sonnet 65, Mother. Still shining like pewter, with your name in blue Times Roman, with its short silk lining of grey, we had put it away, your cabin trunk, these many years, not quite daring to unlock what it might contain or not. Now, here is a cloth that unfolds and releases a rabbit and a parrot embroidered by virgin fingers. And here, your bridal dress of red satin worked in gold. What other discovery is in the unwrapped muslin? I forget, too lost to home your loss, too blanked to let it out in a world of calm Calibri. Your serifs cut sharp, so close to the skin. The third sonnet, Sonnet 78, is about creativity. 3 elements, water, wind, light, represent the 3 muses. The idea that everybody creates a lie as it attempts to copy either nature or the imagination. Sonnet 78, creativity. This sea I improvise to the many tumults the wind scoops on its surface. or light agitates to more whims than any creature swum deep could possibly hold. Or this wind I insinuate in palm fronds and the heavy heat of midsummer, or across well-trod sand where something responds and lifts each wave's obsession with the shore. This light I implicate to fragment more of its white than the rainbow's blurred arcing over a plain where one kikar stands, or spreads unevenly like a vast suffering. So these and other stratagems pass by, that I may make much good in a lie. The next poem is addressed to God. Sonnet 72. Who will come and sing of Majnu's madness, of the loving words of Hallaj on the gibbet, of Sarmad's headless success? Who will come and sing of their dusk and dawn? Who will absorb Gautam's travails before apprehending the steadying balance? Who will come down the mountain to restore the sense numb to the glowing incense? Now twilight spreads more silence than before, and speech seeks refuge in dumb alchemy. The unsaid is left burning as before. I only know no summer sang in me. At this hour, that which makes me cringe or smart may yet awake you more to this tired heart. And finally, because sonnets tend to be love poems, so it's a love poem. Sonnet 50. Let there be silence between us. Silence that has distanced us was once so intense that the long planned hours we shared were tense with your consent, or not. And my immense capacity to bear it, now silence binds me to you, sustains me with those dense moments I can ration with confidence, rare in me, to some sort of substance. A sort not ephemeral like incense in temple dark, or its smoky pretense to waft prayers towards acceptance, but some plenum fragrant with permanence. Not unoften I think this is nonsense, this bleeding heart, this carping diligence. Thank you.
Orooj, would you like to introduce yourself and start?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Orooj, Orooj-e Zafar, and I will be reading poems from my book and some others as well. This is my second book. It's titled Heart the Size of a Loosening Fist. If you'd like a copy, they're available online on merakissa.com. So a bit about me is that I am in my final year of medical school. I've been writing since I've been able to write, and most of my work follows this theme of mental illness, how trauma shapes and transforms us, and how being defined by your trauma, while it's exhausting and terrible, it doesn't necessarily need to be a bad thing. So everyone tells you that your heart is the size of your fist. I think in second grade science, that's what we learn. So I think my kindness is something I've hated about myself, but now I've learned to like that. So I equate having a big heart with kindness, hence the title, Heart the Size of a Loosening Fist. So let's get into it. So very often, I talk to myself in my head, and I will dissociate different parts of myself in attempts to simplify and understand myself better. So this poem was written, addressed to my depression, and I talk to it like I would with a child, not enough patience. Explaining my depression to my depression. Imagine the first ever echo in the Grand Canyon. That lonely, fit in a crevice in my vertebrae and hasn't moved since. Imagine the moon on the side of the earth where everyone is asleep. That quiet is a corner in my lungs that air cannot touch, where no amount of breathing is enough. I know you don't want to believe this is real. Even with my head wrecking balling into the walls, we both want to believe I'm faking it. We both want to believe those keloids could have used stitches. My skin just loves to grow so much, I keep tearing it open for practice. Picture air thinning out away from the earth, into the universe where sound has never been palpable. Not once has a child violated and hushed been heard in space. So I've never screamed here. I have never said no here, and if I did, of course it wasn't loud enough. My depression is the moon unable to keep the tide at bay. It is the blue of a sunrise that cannot help itself. It will come back to this even when the sun leaves. My depression is the water table rising with no floods for proof. My depression is the blossom staying the bud until next spring, and maybe the one after that. My depression is being asked, how could you possibly be sick? You've done so much. Always forgetting every morsel of skin that tore, dragging itself through the broken glass, and emotional attrition enough to carve the Grand Canyon twice over. We both want to believe this isn't real. There are days when being the selfish moon doesn't hurt the ocean, where the other blossoms can make spring without me, where the sun is so brilliant you can't even see the blue, but I want to be more than the quiet in my ribcage. My depression may be the core of the earth, but the sun is where I came from. I am screaming this poem where space has not heard a single sound. This poem is making room where the atmosphere has to dissolve to make meteor showers. We both want to believe this isn't real, but there is a pulse tearing through my wrist that cannot stop screaming otherwise. My depression and I made a ruckus today. For the first time, both of us listened, held hands, grieved, touched each other's empty until we couldn't tell where who began. Tonight, I hope we are louder than ever, and maybe even take a stroll in the winter sun, soak in the day together, get sand between our feet, and blame the water. Why my eyes get heavier. Pain was once the taste of a headache on the bridge of my mouth, the quiver of my hungry fingers, the pining pangs, and the screams of every cell that made me. But pain matured. Now it precipitates to weights and gravity, making my every projection a center to act on. I am a host. My ends are vulnerable, easy to encompass, simpler still to cut open. So hear this: when you ask me to walk a mile in your shoes, know that I could not even stand my own. In my dreams, I am almost beautiful. I arrived at my funeral only to find the coffin missing. My skin was not my skin. It no longer tethered any part of me together. I looked like the inside of a museum still on fire with no one who cared enough to run and retrieve their favorite parts. My funeral was a walled-off grave, and you know they're right. The murderer always returns to the crime scene. No one mourned anything. How can you grieve the insides of someone who barbed-wired their darkness? It was quiet at dusk, the rain quenching my ribcage, bones cracking with movement. No one sighed with relief. Everyone let out an echo of a release. No one can take blame for a stranger who left later than anyone had hoped for. I was prettier than I had ever been alive.
So we have now Eissa, Saeed. You introduce yourself.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Eissa. I do a bunch of things. I am a playwright. I am a screenwriter, but poetry was my first love, I remember. That's where I started. That's why I keep coming back to it. And to me, it's a lot to do with it being an emotional snapshot of a moment. So I have two things for you today. One, the first one is called Becoming. 8 lemon trees planted in a row, each one for a grandparent from generations ago. In time, if you learn to take it slow, you might be able to watch them twist and turn, singularly following an insatiable urge to grow. 8 lemon trees fertilized by your sweat and tears that refuse to flow. Patience is indeed a virtue when all you have is time lying there 6 feet below. Use your hands, don't let them down. You haven't bothered so far to learn that in this dirt lives your crown. Keep the earth, pick away the stones, tag all your roots on their bones. 8 lemon trees planted between half a moon and the dying light of a setting sun, with hands that tremble from the guilt of failure and the misery of not being the prodigal son. Water and insecticide together form an irony, a milky white pollutant that in the same breath protecting and executing this divine colony. Don't you know you are of a farming dynasty where what you reap is the only worthy currency? So be careful what you sow, for wheat is not just the color of your skin, but also what you were born to grow. 7 rose bushes planted in a row, each one for a lost child that no one cares to know. 7 rose bushes planted in a row to fulfill the hope of someday, maybe, just maybe, becoming and becoming and becoming a lush meadow. Only if you sniff around will you catch a saccharine scent that lives just beneath the sharp coral glow. Kindness is but the only ruler in this garden. Even self-assured flowers will believe they're ugly if you repeatedly tell them so. This next one is called You Owe Me. This was written as a spoken word piece initially, so I'm just going to context. There are 4 different people talking to each other in this, so just bear with me. It'll make sense at the end. As with most poetry, it makes sense at the end. This is called You Owe Me. Everything you are, everything you have, everything you know to be, and everything you will ever be, my child, you owe me. My lands that nourish your existence, my rivers that fuel your essence, my flag that allows you an identity, and even my bigotry that lashes your vanity, all serve as reminders that you are just an unwanted visitor in my garden pond of lush lilies. So you best not forget, Beta Ji, you owe me. Everything we were, everything we had, everything we wanted to be, and everything you will ever need, baby boy, you owe me. My arms that held you in protection, my love that made you into a person, my heart that you believe is calcified coal, and even my mind that we both know ravaged your soul are all just reminders that I didn't break what was already broken by the ones you loved before me. So you best not forget. Mi lindo, you owe me. Everything you want, everything you believe, everything you dream about, and everything you think you'll be, young man, you owe me. My academies that for ages have fed your mind, my acceptance that I've always claimed is blind, my tongue that deems you a savage other despite the fact that I call you my brother are all magnificent reminders that a resident alien is all you're allowed to be in this land from sea to shining sea. So you best not forget, little brown boy, you owe me. So sometimes I wonder if it's even worth the fight. If I should just submit with all my might and keep taking the bullets that you shoot out of spite, because I realize I've got a history of bringing flowers to a gunfight, and that's just one of my fine qualities that you'll never cite. So let's settle this score once and for all. I'm not your serf, and I refuse to crawl. Though I might be scared, I will stand tall. I'll be loud, I'll get in your face, and I will not stall, even if just to repeat forever my home, my lover, and my oppressor. Each one of you, you owe me. This is just a reminder. Please have no doubt that I only climbed the ladder that you set out, with steps missing, with no safety net, no clout, and you remain to watch me until I rout. But I keep climbing in pursuit of the hope that you promised, and it keeps me pining. Believe me, I'm well aware I should be grateful that I'm alive, but what kind of existence is just trying to survive for the same hope that now you owe to my body, my heart, my mind, and every last ancestor of mine? So don't you let yourself forget, despite all that you've come to expect, you owe me.
Mehvash, your turn. You have to introduce yourself as well.
Okay. So, I'm Mehvash Amin. I am a writer, but I'm also a publisher and an editor. And just want to show you quickly, subliminally, this book, which I publish, and I think. Oh, okay. Sorry. Which I publish, and it has all kinds of writing in it. So this is our third, and we are coming out with the fourth. And I think most of the people in this lineup have been in this anthology. Okay, thank you. And I've also received a Pushcart Prize received, nominated, Wishful Thinking. And here I go. This poem is called I Revolt. It's about rebellion. So the first is called Lemons. The rebellion of lemons because they were not born pomegranates is understandable. Because pomegranates have fleshy seeds and poetic skin and a crown, while you, lemon, have thin seeds and bitter skin, no surge of yellow geezering on your head. So I understand your revolt, but it does not matter, lemon. Things are just that way, and your rindy skin can be consumed, and your bitterness is more memorable than the cinch of crenulated color on pomegranate's head. For what is a crown anyway, but a thing everyone wants to strip you of? The second one is called Sand, and it starts. Sorry? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So the second one is called Sand, and it begins with a bit of. I should mention that I'm a bit of a linguist also. I know French and I'm learning Spanish, and I wanted this to be a kind of a what do you call it? Quadrilingual poem? No, it's got 4 languages, because rebellion is everywhere, right? So I just wanted to explain this to you. The translation will be given. Pero tu sabes la rebelión renate hoy, which means, but as you know, revolt is reborn today. That rebellion of green things that will take over. Haven't you heard? Also the revolt of sand that stares with Mika eyes at those tall towers of concrete, glass, flash. It squints at them, then laughs a susurrus laugh as it slips and slides closer, knowing that centuries from now, the rebellion of these buildings will be a memory in its slipping, sliding, burning mind. The third one is called, thank you. Thank you. The third one is called gravity. Now remember that brief moment when a body leaves water and heaviness shoots upwards to legs, arms, torso? That is the defiance of gravity, reclaiming that body as its own leaden vehicle, then gone the lightness of watery thoughts. Yeah. The fourth one is called life. And it starts with an Urdu sort of little bit of verse. आज बगावत ने सर उठाया फिर कि मौत धूल उठाती है जिंदगानी पर. But friend, understand that the ultimate revolt is that of life. It still goes on in bedrooms and bazaars, not caring really about death clocking in every day, hour, second. It forces babies to push out, not accepting death signature, just cancelling it out like a bad check, not looking too long at that cadaver in the soil, more interested really in the food at the wake. And then it ends with a little bit of French thing. Ah, la révolte des fleurs qui meurt dans la vase est supprimée enfin par la révolte des fleurs qui s'ouvrent chaque jour. Ah, the revolt of flowers dying in the vase is finally subsumed by the revolt of flowers that bloom every day. Thank you. The second poem is about people I have met at parties. And so at 8 o'clock, adamantine eyes, ivory teeth, pharaonic feet. Something cold and yet hot, like a pair of lizards coupling on the roof. Not caring about falling upside down on some terrified child, sheets drawn over, waiting for that soft, weightless thud. But what about those eyes and the marble spur of skin and ligament as if carved millennia ago, and teeth that seem made of some ancient tusk? What can you really say to a person like that? Hi. And then I could release myself from those eternal eyes and slither off and feel relief in the company of someone less of the ages, more of the moment. Then, thank you. Then 11 o'clock. I got a 9 o'clock and a 10 o'clock, but I think, no. We'll just skip to 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock, I had met him before and heard his tale. But tonight he was silent, as he hid himself behind smoke at this gathering. The undulating arc of chatter slipped about, and he thought of the other arc that had brought him too soon to this moment. Many muddled seasons ago, he had hidden from the killing, but the killing now found him. A whiplash of shots, a hiding, then the guttural sound of the train as it shuddered to what had suddenly become a city in another country, a city he would spend the rest of his life in. Today, 3 drinks didn't help. He wanted a fourth. He wanted this laughing company, these amber pools of lamplight to excise that moment in the alley from his mind forever. And thank you. The third bit is called Midnight. It's a bit X-rated, so okay, just bear with it. I saw the raven alight on her shoulder as her holographic eyes took in one woman, then another. Her lips pursed into a tight red censure, and her red nails glinted with precise malevolence. The raven stilled its wings as she sipped from her wine. The raven drank too from that deep, deep red. They seemed to confer, and then she moved to a man, and I saw her part her legs in her thoughts. The raven dropped her thought into his, and I felt the pressure in his loins, sudden, insistent, non-discriminating. The raven flew off, needed somewhere where a shrill want of things met a loud love of flesh. He was rich after all, and she fleshy. A third short poem about my grandfather. Peeling back his eyelids to contest the glistening tongue of morning that rose to his memory, he could not see. And so he lived another sepia day and another grey evening with the sage continents of islands. The flux of voices deadened by a defaulting air, of faces as dim as far-off planets, carried him in a trajectory of motion denied to his legs. Slowly, he skinned a tangerine in the sun and orchestrated an unheard symphony with his voice. At least his speech had not yet overshot the alphabet. And at night, he drew another dream from his tired repertoire. Fish drifting through splendid corridors of coral architecture. The lacteal earth riotously offering fruit and wheat and honey. And yet, from the street below, not even the ordinary scent of the tali tree would reach him to second his motion in favor of paradise. Then one day he woke up with a taut urban sky building visions on the window of bone-littered clearings where horses and elephants come to die, felt time computing a countdown. Or perhaps not. Perhaps half hearing, half sight, and immobility had frozen his intuition, so that he died thinking of his dust-laden orchard and its line of humming poplars, their wire-drawn branches lit telescopically by the winter light like skeletons painted on the sky.
Haris?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ilona. I'm Haris Khalique, and I'm here because I write poetry. I write poetry in both Urdu and English. Well, so I've read a couple of these poems in the Karachi Literary Festival, but you know, I'm reading these for the first time in Islamabad, except for the book launch that Ilona generously moderated. This poem is titled The Palm Reader, Aleppo. We are all familiar with what happened to Aleppo in Syria, the war and the destruction and the loss of human lives. Slowly, the evening began to descend. No one survived in the neighborhood. But the palm reader, he had squeezed himself under a large trunk of fresh potatoes when they came and opened fire. It was indiscriminate. After they left, he stepped out of the house to find himself alone among fresh corpses, in street and on door sill. The corpses will remain scattered till the following day, neighborhood cordoned off. The enormity of death made him indifferent. He felt hungry, walked back home, took out some potatoes, boiled them unpeeled, sprinkled salt, ate. Bored with not feeling, doing, he slipped a torch into his pocket, stepped out of the house. He would read the palms of dead. That would take him through evening, night, many palms to read, no fortunes to tell. Thank you. Thank you, Salman. The Magician and the Boy, Waziristan. Stony winter morning, mist. Half awake, the magician answered the hurried knock at the front door. The boy, covered in dust, smell, carried a cumbrous sack on his back. Coarse jute threads, interwoven, a flexible metal strip looped round the mouth of the sack. The boy looked straight into the magician's eyes. I come from far. I remember watching you in the circus with my father. You had cut a woman in half, put her back. They were all burned to death after the bomb went off. Only my mother's body is not charred. I bring her to you. She's only cut in half. I've got time for one more. Yeah. A poem in a slightly different mood. I know these are very sad poems, but this is a little different. It's called The Mother Tongue. Mehvash, you have written a quadrilingual poem, and perhaps this is an attempt to understand the multilinguality in which we live. The Mother Tongue. Helen asked Rohini, "What is your mother tongue?" Rohini is my daughter. Helen asked Rohini, "What is your mother tongue?" Rohini, 3, exposed to 3 languages, chatting in Urdu, taught in English, scolded in Pothohari, says without thinking, pink. Misal comes back from school. She's my niece. Misal comes back from school, told us what she found. Urdu is richer. It has more words for socks. English has 1, socks. Urdu has 3. Moze, jurabe, socks. Ferre was moved to live in the US. Barely 5, the 3rd language became her first. She learnt another, writes poems in Spanish, her new 2nd language. They read, they write, they cry, they fight, chirpy or gloomy, dull or bright. Pink is the mother tongue. Thank you very much.
We have a newcomer here, Aurangzaib Khan. And please introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you, Ilona. I'm Aurangzaib Khan. I'm a journalist, first and foremost, but I'll try my hand at anything. For a long, long time, I wrote poetry as if it was a private act, as if it was for myself. A long time passed in between, and I thought it probably would never happen until now that I'll be reading it to an audience. So thank you, everybody, for being here and for this opportunity. This first poem is about a school fellow, a classmate. It's called Fatal Star. Fatal Star. It was the time of trails, tall Yamaha motorbikes that everybody in class 9 seemed to want, when only you had one. On misty mornings you would arrive, cheeks pressed by the filling in the helmet, You'd park the bike, step down like it wasn't a machine but a horse. Like you were a warrior of sorts, a Viking child delivered in future, when science fiction was just fiction, no more. Lean and tall, astride your trail, you could have been a bronze biomechanoid that I, a Giger fanatic, had invoked. In lunch breaks, you would stand with the boys by the old canteen to eat a sandwich, sip Coke and laugh at crude jokes. But your princely postures said you knew you were too good for them. It was the year new stars were born in Bollywood. Kumar Gaurav and Sanjay Dutt, sons replacing fathers, aging heroes forced into character roles. I heard someone say you look like the young Kumar, but for students who circled you, eager to enter your orbit, you were the real star. You turned a bully, and who is to blame? Your company or the drugs that change you? You beat me up, the boys did too. Lost teenagers, we were all trying our best to fit forms and patterns. Cruel molds our peers cast us into. Years later, you took me home, on your bike, battered now. We drove down quiet racecourse road by colonial bungalows with ancient trees, bathed in autumn sun, dead leaves, adrift on roads and lawns. You spoke and the wind caught your words. I only half heard what you said. I could tell you wanted to make up. In your room we talked briefly. On the way out I saw framed portraits on the wall. Black and white pictures of your family. We ran into your father on the veranda, a man so proud it made sense that you should be his son. Now 30 years have gone by. I finally get to see your mother. She sits stoic, her backbone straight. We talk of you, a common subject. She has made peace with a cruel fate. She finds consolation in her work. Speaks to me of lives she has touched when all I want to talk is grief. Back when I saw him at the annual sports day, I thought you had your father's looks, his chief guest regal manner. Now looking at her waver like a ghost, between brittle grief and fragile grace, I can see you in your mother's face. This is called Death from Above. The other day, a jet flew over the hotel. So low it rattled the windows of my room in Lodz. Would it drop a bomb? I imagined a silver cylinder, twisting and turning, gleaming and rushing, reflecting the gold sunlight of a cold Quetta afternoon. Falling and tearing through the roof into my bed. Its explosion I won't hear, won't even know in my bones. Closer than the bang that crushed the building of another hotel in another place not long ago, sparing me to die another day. Perhaps today it would be nice to die from a falling bomb, romantic even in the way the Blitz was. It stirred images of air raids and sirens, bombers in their formations, blackbirds in migration, echoing wails of invasion, this warning of death from above, delivered in the nick of time. So you could hide, board up your windows, blinker all lights for the blackout. You could prepare, go hide in a bunker, jump for the trench or run for shelter. These days we die unaware, random victims of human bombs. This is called Sweet Tooth. She took syrup from a spiralized sweet to spike hair for her royal welcome. She has a thing for sugar, a craving in blood that weakens limbs like love. They wondered why the queen was bitten, her spikes like stings she lent to bees. A teenage punk, a rebel, a renegade, no nicotine, no caffeine, no alcohol or drugs, just natural high on a subversive streak, and a yearning for sugar that moistens the palms like love. Red, green, brown, and blue, seduction comes in varied hues. Chocolate, she says, evokes a sensation of love. She craves the forbidden fruit, the sweet spurt, the liquid rush, a melting of self like chocolate in his mouth. But love's dark traces leaves a bitter aftertaste. Thank you.
So, Salman, you and I are going to divide the time. I will read 2 short poems, then I'm going to hand over to you. Okay? I am going to read 2 short poems. This one is called Voice Box, and it's inspired by a song that I was listening to, The Dog Days. The dog days. The dog days are over, she sings, played in a cottage in the hills on a monsoon night, soft with the percussion of crickets. And my mind winds back, night driving with my son, and this song, this sound, first heard carrying a wing on our speed. And though we drove towards a death, deep space, ink sky, dark earth enfolded us, and this voice, air held resonant, rapturous, ringing notes set free. This one's called Fog. This is for my daughter. Driving. I'd never done it. Do you say in fog or through it? Yet knew instantly the consuming vapor, blankness that cuts vision, breath that comes short, choked before inhalation. As if fog's fingers rise around, within, enswathing. Much driven roads are demapped, foreign territory. Behind twists and bends on narrow roads, great rocks loom and empty spaces past which the road might fall away. Landmarks dimly perceived, barely recognized, a mangled winter trunk, a light dim within the muffled blandness, as if fashioned from it. In the open, the thick, sick yellow of shrouded streetlights, figures, dark shapes, emerging sudden dim exposures on the whirling white. Only your presence granted me courage, guiding me through the comfort of details glimpsed brief in pockets. A clump of baby's breath, clear and sudden against the headlights, framed by the grainy dark. Thank you. Salman, over to you.
Okay, this is an old one. Refers to something that happened around 40 years ago, not far from here. You'll recognize it. Sorry, can you hear that? That's clear? Okay. Something that happened about 40 years ago, not far from here. It's called White Room. Click, rewind, start. White room, almost no color. Not anymore, never anymore any color. Stop, rewind, start. White room, bare white walls, deep cold, but almost no grief. Not anymore. White walls, white floor, even shadows are white, almost no shadows. Stop, start, walls bare, almost, but not quite. Faint halls and smudges, very faint, almost not there. Stop, start. In pre-dawn April chill, hanged man's tongue lolls. Eyes leave sockets almost. Cold feet point groundward. Stop. Start. Almost some color there, some grief, perhaps even pain. White room, white roof, no change, not anymore, never anymore any change. Stop. Every change for the worse so far, almost every change every time. No more struggle. No, not anymore. Cold white sheet, no warmth, no warmth. Stop, rewind, start. Then strangulation, neck cracks, genitals to mess and ejaculate their sticky store. White clothes soiled. Stop. Almost some anger there, some grief. Brief red flare, but now no color. Rewind, start. White room, almost no movement. Eons long uncoiling history so cold. Almost some shadow there, gone now. Stop, rewind, start. Hanged man's dangling in pre-dawn chill. White feet pointing to earth. Almost nothing has changed. Almost nothing ever anymore. Stop, stop. This is a few years ago. Sorry, we were talking about political poetry. This is called Death of Osama. Sunlight ages to bronze. Fingers of shadow reach across an earthen courtyard to where a rope cot rests. There is a murmuring of prayer among the handful of relatives, neighbors. The cotton cloth shrouding the form on the cot glows white through the blue shadows. Indoors, behind a curtain, the women mourn noisily with a mother whose face is hideous with grief. Her older child stands by the curtain, brown eyes wide at what has happened to her brother. The mullah concludes, the elders rise, more murmurs, a cry, no God but God. The mourners, led by an aging uncle in a high starched turban, heft the cot and shuffle out the street door. The mother's lamentations fall behind as the small procession moves up the village street, then along the hill path, through a grove of trees, and over a daisy-spangled meadow. Near the burial place, the shroud slips, exposing the dead boy's foot. Skin blackened by fever and toenails turned yellow. The old uncle covers him up again. Where he is buried, there is the shade of a walnut tree and scent of nearby pines. Beneath the earth they fling, his head is turned to face a valley where, his head is turned to face a valley where a flight of swifts soars up through depths of air and the clouds paint patterns of sunlight on the slopes. As they return through the village street, they hear tea shop radios, loud with comment on what had taken place the previous night, not many miles away. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I know that two people have their books for sale here. Orooj, you have yours? No. Athar Saab, you, okay. Do you want to, are they right here or outside? Okay, so if anybody's interested in buying the book. And the Aleph Review is available at readings outside of the book fair. It has poetry as well as writing in every genre. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you for being here. We have a very good audience today. I'm so happy.